In the NIV, it says this: those who had scattered preached the word wherever they went. Philip went down to the city of Samaria and proclaimed the Messiah there. Concentrating on that, when the crowds, catch these words now, heard Philip and saw the signs he performed, they all paid close attention to what he said. When people heard what he had to say, they saw the miracles, the clear signs of God's actions, they hung on his every word. I thought, I like that, because that sounds to me like what we do. The audience we minister to, these kids, I believe they need words and actions to make connections. They've heard a lot of words. They've heard a lot of promises. They've heard a lot of good intentions. But I believe they need the words and our actions to really make the connections. But kids don't care how much we know about Jesus until they know how much we care about them. We can say all kinds of words, but until they know if we care about who they are or where they've been or what their background is or why they're acting, they won't care what we know about Jesus until they know if we care about them. So we're trying to make connections. Let's look at some of this. Again, the NIV said they heard and saw and they paid close attention. They didn't just pay attention, they paid close attention. The NLV says, eager to hear and see, they listened intently. Not just listening, but they listened intently. What does intensity look like? How many of you watched Michael Phelps at the Olympics this summer and you remember that photo? That's intense. The word in the Greek is semion, if I'm saying it right, semion, typically miraculous, given to confirm or corroborate what is going on. Further, it goes on to say, it authenticates what the Lord and his eternal purpose. Catch this, especially by doing what mere man cannot replicate or take credit for. That's one of the things I love about Royal Family, is we work hard. And there's some actions from our hard work. But there's things that are happening that we cannot replicate. There's things that happen that we cannot take credit for. And that's one of the things I love about Royal Family, is when we work hard, it gives us opportunities for things that we can't replicate. We just can't make some of those things happen. Those are the signs that are pointing kids back to Jesus. How can we create signs when there are things that we cannot replicate, right? You just can't say, well, I think I'll just pull a few miracles out today. There are things that we can't replicate. So what we can do is we can create opportunities for God's signs to work through us. We can create opportunities for God's signs to work through us. We are going to be looking for opportunities. What do opportunities look like? Psalm 40 says, I waited patiently for the Lord. He heard my cry. He lifted me up out of the slimy pit, out of the mud and the mire. He set my feet on a solid rock and gave me a firm place to stand. Concentrating on verse 2, he lifted me out of the slimy pit, out of the mud and the mire, and he set my feet on a solid place to stand. That's our opportunity right there. If we want to help those kids, we have to help get them out of the mud. They're in the mud. They're in the mire. They're in that slimy pit. Abuse has put them in there. Abandonment has put them in there. And they are down in that muddy pit, and we are going to climb in that pit and help them out. But guess what? If you get in that pit to help them, you're going to get muddy too. Right? You're going to get muddy too. So here's a young girl in the muddy pit. By demonstration purposes, you can see her on the screen. Just imagine that this is my young friend up there on the screen. I've got my little friend, and I'm going to put her right down here in the mud pit, because that's what you do, right? She's all slimed up in there. She's all slimed up in there. She's got her little head out, just like up there on the screen. But if I climb down in that pit, and if I grab that young girl, and I hold her close to my heart, and I say, I'm going to get you out of this pit. I'm going to get you cleaned up. We'll get you some dinner. We'll get you clothes in the laundry. And we'll get you to bed clean tonight. Either way, just words or my actions. Either way, she still gets out of the pit if she can get out on her own. But when I climb down there with her, we make a connection. We make a connection if I climb down there with her. And when there's a connection, it gives me the chance to set her feet on a solid rock. But what's the price I have to pay to make that connection? I have to be willing to get that mud on me too. But I make a deeper connection. And sometimes the connection is not just deep. Sometimes that connection is intense. So what does mud look like? When you get in the mud with these kids, it's a sign pointing them back to the one who's greater than us. It's the Semyon. When you get in the mud, it's the sign to these kids pointing them back to God. What does muddy look like at camp and mentoring club? Sometimes it's the words that are spoken to you from the kids, like, you are the worst counselor ever. Have any of your people heard that? So here's a couple of muddy stories for you. We had a boy in San Jose, California, who was really having a hard time, and they were about to kick him out of camp Monday night. They were about to kick him out of camp Tuesday night. They were about to kick him out of camp Wednesday night. Finally, they went to this boy and they said, the counselor had been patient and kind and long-suffering and all those things. Finally, he goes to this young man and he says, young man, I love you, but if your behavior doesn't improve, we're going to send you home. And the boy thought about it, and he thought about it, and he came back and he said, did you mean what you said? And the guy said, yeah, if your behavior doesn't improve, we're going to send you home. He said, not that part. When you said, I love you, did you mean that? Because that boy knew he had been behaving worthy of getting sent home. They talked to him long enough. His behavior was worthy, but his counselor showed mercy and kindness and grace and long-suffering. So his counselor proved through his actions that he was getting muddy with that kid. And when he proved with his actions that he was connecting with that child, and then he said those words, I love you, it registered with that boy, and he made a connection. So in conclusion, accept the mud. Point number 2, embrace the mud. It will be there. It's not so bad. Get a little bit on you, make a design out of it, And this last one is the hardest one. We know this in our head, but it's hard on our heart. Mud is not personal. I'm here to say thank you for getting muddy on behalf of the kids. And can I honestly, truly say, mud looks good on you.